Okay, so we have started recording. So once again, good morning. My name is Jasmine Shaw, and I'm the director for the Office of School Facilities. I work for the Department of Education, and I'm responsible for ensuring that the K through 12 public schools, as well as charter schools, are safely built to the South Carolina building codes, as well as our guideline and any other standards that exist. I'm also responsible for over 1,200 schools. I have a staff of 9 within our department. And also, I've been working for the Department of Education since January of 2018, so a little over 2 years now. I have Jack Bonnet. He works for our department. He's going to go ahead and introduce himself.
Hey, good morning, everyone. As Jasmine said, I'm Jack Bonnet. I'm the OSF contact for all of the charter schools. So if you guys haven't met me yet, I'm sure we'll be talking soon, and I'll give you some more information later on in the presentation about what I do.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, next we have Nathan Ellis.
Hey, Jasmine, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I'm still working through a few technology issues here, but glad to be on with you and look forward to sharing my part of the presentation shortly.
Okay, thank you. All right, and next we have Ashley, Department of Transportation.
Hello, Rick Losey here.
Ashley, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. Would you like to give your introduction, or you want to maybe wait until later?
Sure. I'm Ashley Johnson. I'm working the traffic engineering office at SCDOT. Our group, traffic operations, among other things, I have a group called school operations that works with OSF very closely on all the schools and school sites from a traffic standpoint. And I have a couple guys that work for me, and I believe they're on the call. And I'll once I get to my part of the presentation, I'll introduce those guys and provide some more information.
Thank you, Ashley. And there will be opportunities to ask questions throughout the webinar. And also there's a Q&A at the end of our webinar today. We also have, and Donna Manning and Kayla, if you would like to say anything, feel free.
Good morning.
Yeah, we're here. We're just watching.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Jasmine, I believe you're muted. We can't hear any audio at this time.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Okay, can everyone see that the topics presentation slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So today I'm going to go over the OSF process, including a timeline, as well as Jack is going to go over the property acquisition for both new schools and existing buildings. So just to give you some history of the Office of School Facilities, we were established in March of 1924. Unfortunately, as a result of a tragic fire that took place at the Cleveland School near Camden, South Carolina, that particular school was having an event in an auditorium in which oil lamp caught fire, and it killed 77, both adults and children. And so from that, our office was established and more strict guidelines were put together when it comes to the safety of schools in South Carolina, as well as around the nation. So for the Office of School Facilities, we are the building official for the state of South Carolina. And what that means is that we have the authority to grant permission to safely occupy a building, structure, or premise as it relates to public schools. Our preview includes K through 12, and I highlighted certain areas in this particular slide just so that you're familiar with. We're only K through 12, so anything outside of that would not be applicable to our office. And we are solely responsible for new construction and renovation projects. So our office, we review blueprints. We also, as I mentioned earlier, ensuring compliance with the South Carolina building codes. We issue building permits, which means that a piece of property or building has the permission to be constructed. During the construction process, we go out, we do inspections, we do an overhead, and we do a final inspection. And as a result of the final inspection, we issue a certificate of occupancy, which means that the building is safe to occupy. Our office, we work together with other agencies such as Department of Transportation that's here today, State Fire as well that's here today, and South Carolina Labor Licensing and Regulation Department. If your building has a sprinkler system, we deal a lot with that particular department that will review the plans for the sprinkler system and provide acceptance or rejection of the system. We also work with DHEC as well, particularly regarding safe water for the schools. So this particular slide I wanted to go over because our audience today are newly approved charter schools. And so, and finding out how does charter schools fit in the picture of of what I'm talking about today. So the state statute, section 594050, Part B says that the charter schools must adhere to the same health and safety as well as civil rights and disabilities requirements as applied to other public schools. And you may have seen that before. If you haven't, that's how charter schools fit into the health and safety of what we do within our office. Okay, so as I mentioned, a part of what we're going to talk about today is the property acquisition. So as a newly approved charter school, you may or may not have gotten to this point, but will start at this point when it comes to acquiring a piece of land. And this is a very simple flow chart of our internal process for property acquisitions. And I'm going to let Jack take over at this point. He's welcome to share any information that he has on his end.
Thanks, Jasmine. As I said before, my name's Jack Bonnet, and I'll be the contact for all of you since you're all starting charter schools. I work directly with the charter school representatives and the design professionals. And what I'd like to talk about today is, like Jasmine said, the process. The first challenge you're gonna have is finding a location for your new school if you don't have that yet. And OSF is tasked to help you with that as the authority having jurisdiction. We approve all of the property acquisitions. We come out and do the evaluations along with the Department of Transportation. So what I'd like to do is, before I go through that process, just share my screen with you real quick and show you where you can access more information. So can you guys see my screen here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is on our Department of Education website, and I'll give you guys links to all of this. I'll put it in the chat box when I'm done, but I just want to step through it really quick. But this is where you can find a lot of helpful information as you're starting up. So if you haven't looked at this page yet, I'd highly recommend going to it. And if you go to the first box here and click on it, South Carolina School Facilities Planning and Construction Guides, in here you'll see the 2020 Planning and Construction Guide that we just updated. And that's going to have a lot of good guidance. Now for property acquisition, which is the first real phase you're going to come to, that's in Division 3. So go to Chapter 3 basically of this guide, and you're going to see some very good guidance. I'm going to go scroll down here to section 3, but you'll see the guidance for acquiring the properties. And the thing to remember that is if you have any questions, I'm here to help. So I'm going to give you my contact information before we're done, so that if you have any questions, you'll be able to contact me. But here in this section in Division 3, you can read through this. It'll tell you the general steps you have to take and the requirements for acquiring the property. And the first step you're going to take is to fill out what's known as a Form F2A. Okay, that's our basic form for starting the process of evaluating the property. And I'm going to see if I can pull up that form here on my screen. I may have to switch over. Okay, so give me just 1 second. Okay, and you guys should be able to see that now. This is the form F2A. Okay, again, we have links to this, and I'm going to provide that, but this is the form you'll fill out to start the process. If you find a property that you think is viable, you'll fill this out and submit it to OSF. We have a portal that you would submit it through, but if you usually we work with the design professionals and let them use the portal. So I can work directly with you if you don't have access to the portal. You can email this to me, but the main thing is I'll be working with you directly to figure out how to get this submitted. But it's pretty basic. You can see what we're going to need is mostly the top portion of this filled out. And the main thing is we need to get a description of the location of the property, and some idea so that we can look at, before we even come out, get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, so it's a pretty basic form, and this is what we use to start evaluating the property. But we need to get the basic information, like I said, that's in the top here, right down to the portion where it says address or location description. We need that information. And anything else you have is helpful, but that's what starts the process for us. Now, I will say that the Office of School Facilities has limited resources. I am the only contact that you'll have for charter schools. And so with that in mind, I'm working with every charter school in the state. And so we have limited resources, and that means we have a limited number of site reviews that we can do, along with all of the drawing reviews that we have to do, the inspections that we have to do. We get pretty busy, especially during the summer. So we've worked with Department of Transportation to evaluate these properties. And one of the things I've been working with DOT is that we'll take this information, and the DOT rep and myself will talk and take a look at the property online first, because really the big picture that we want to see right up front is, are there any showstoppers when it comes to traffic or fire access or anything like that? So we like to take a preliminary look at these properties and see if there's anything that might, right out the gate prevent you from, using this property for a school. That's something we've kind of been really trying to do to cut down on the number of, you can imagine if we have to travel, to the one end of the state and look at a property, and as soon as we get out of the car, we realize it's not going to work because of the traffic impact. We just pretty much wasted a day for something we could have done online. So that's what we've been trying to do to improve and speed up the process a little bit. But with that in mind, we try to screen the properties, and if it's viable, we'll come out there and take a look at it and go from there. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. So after the preliminary review, like I said, we'll go out and schedule a site review, and the Department of Transportation will send a rep out there. I'll be there. The other personnel on site will usually be the design professional, if you have one, and the district representative, somebody that's either the school, that's going to be the school superintendent, or board members. We have in our guide that any other interested parties can show up, but with the COVID outbreak right now, we're trying to limit the number of people down on these site reviews and on our inspections. So we try to keep it to at least or no more than 5 people. So we really don't encourage bringing the entire board out there to go with us on the site review. But that's just what we're doing right now because we're in quarantine. So another question that we get asked a lot is, what do we look for out there? Well, obviously, we're looking for code issues. We're looking for anything. We go by the South Carolina Building Code. So we're looking for any issues that might come up with regard to that. And that includes, like I said before, the location of the property. Is there a lot of traffic around there? How's drop off or pickup going to impact the traffic flow? If buses come in and out, is it going to block traffic and cause a hazard? Are you near an airport? Are you around industry? How developed is it? So that's one thing we look at. DOT has a huge input on that, looking at traffic impact, and sometimes they do traffic studies to reinforce that, and I'm sure they'll talk about that a little bit later. But from an OSF standpoint, we get their feedback on that, and we also look at life safety issues. Where your fire hydrants, how far apart are they? Can an emergency vehicle get in and access the school from all sides if it had to get in and fight a fire? We'll also look at, later down the road, radio coverage. If you're looking at a property that's way out, in the middle of nowhere, will it have emergency radio coverage? Because you'll need that. With regard to the building itself, I'm looking at means of egress. I'm looking at, is it compliant? Is it ADA compliant? What's the accessibility like for disabilities? Do you have the proper size bathrooms? Do you meet code with that? Are the doorways wide enough for a wheelchair? Are the halls wide enough? We've seen some buildings where the halls weren't compliant with code, and they had to do something they had to address that. So these are the issues that will impact your bottom line. We don't work with you on your budget, but we'll tell you what you'll have to do, and that always costs money if you have to make improvements like that. Another thing we look at is if you're going to be serving food, what kind of food facilities are you going to have? Are you going to have natural gas piped in there? You have to deal with code on that. Interior classrooms, what kind of natural lighting do you have? Because there's code that there's OSF guidance that requires a certain amount of natural light in your interior spaces. So a lot of the older buildings may not have that. Another thing that would have to be addressed. Obviously on the site, do you have any buried tanks or other potential hazards, that might be there? And in general, what's the size of the building, the square footage? Because we need to look at that and determine what kind of fire barriers you might need. Is there asbestos around? Does that have to be removed? And also one thing to note, I don't think it's on this form, but one thing I like to find out is when was the building last occupied, because that'll play a role in what we have to do to bring it up to code as well as far as fire safety. So that's just a few of the things we look at, but that's kind of the big picture items that we address there. Now I'm gonna move on to after we get through with the evaluation, what I'll do, and I'm gonna have to switch my screen up again here, so give me a second. Let's see. And I apologize for having to switch back and forth like this, but there we go. So once you fill out the F2A and we come out and do the evaluation and I take some notes on it, what I'll fill out and send back, and this is actually the approval form, we'll basically just go through here and I'll make general remarks on all of the items we just talked about and anything else that needs to be addressed. But you can see there's some items in this F2 form that we get specific on when it comes to the utilities and things like that. You'll notice down here at the bottom, it needs to be signed by the district superintendent and the district school board chair. And then the final approval authority, as I said before, is our director, Jasmine, will sign off on it if it looks like a viable school property that you could use. Notice in here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, that it's not just my site evaluation that we have to look at. We look at, the site evaluation is just item number 7 on here if you look at the fine print. So there's a lot of information that comes to us that we have to review and evaluate before we sign off on any property. So I just want to make a note there that a lot of people look at us and think that we're the one thing they have to, we're the challenge, I guess, sometimes is what people think, but really we're trying to help you make sure that you're purchasing a property that's going to be safe and it's going to work properly for school. And there's a lot of other information that has to be input there too. Okay. So with that said, I think if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jasmine, and I'll copy some links in my contact information and put it in the chat box for you guys to have access to. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to contact me. We'll be talking sooner or later. So I always encourage people to get in, get in the process early on.
Thank you, Jack. I also wanted to add to that, if you do not have a design professional at the state of your property acquisition, then you can just email our school facilities email account with the information that Jack mentioned on the F2A form. That's perfectly fine. I will talk later about when a design professional is absolutely needed within the process. Which is coming up right now. So as you can see, this is the OSF process flow chart. You will get a copy of this as well. This is just a flow from the start to the end for a certificate of occupancy. It starts with the school district or charter school, of course, making a decision that you want to have a school. Once that decision is made, or you've already acquired your piece of property, and so now you're moving to step 2, which is your building. And so at that point, you do want to hire a South Carolina registered design professional. And I'll show you how you can verify. Switch over here. That the person that you're hiring is indeed a South Carolina registered design professional. So Labor and Licensing Regulations has a website that you can look up any design professional with a certification. So you would just go to this website, llr.sc.gov, and you would go to look up a license. And then you would just find the engineer, or it could be an architect. I'm just going to look up engineer for now. And you just simply put their name in, the information in here. First and last would just be perfectly fine. You would select their license type, which would be an engineer in this case. Make sure you're not a robot. Okay, and then the license you just click on the license, and this will show you the expiration of their license and ensuring that their status is active. So this is something that you definitely want to make sure that you take the liberty in going through to make sure you're hiring a certified design professional. So as you can also tell, the design professional has several responsibilities, one of which is submitting their plans to our Office of School Facilities. We have a current electronic portal where you can submit the plans, the design professional can. We then will receive those plans and review them. But in parallel to that, the design professional is also reaching out to the Department of Transportation. Once again, that Jack mentioned about looking at the traffic patterns in the study and making sure that there's adequate traffic flow as well for the school, as well as the licensing, labor, and regulation, which I mentioned earlier, if there's a sprinkler system involved. Also, design professional does have the opportunity to reach out to the local fire. That particular local fire department will be responding to any events at that school or at that location. There are areas where the local building official, I ran into this in December of last year, but the local building official has I call it the key of utilities, of turning on the utilities for that particular location. So sometimes the local building official is indeed involved in this process as well. But as you can tell, all of this is led by the South Carolina Registered Design Professionals. So while that's going on, our department internally are reviewing the plans. We're looking at life safety. We're looking at accessibility, fire department access. We're looking at building components, means of egress. How can you get out the building safely? So once that review is complete, we will then issue what's called a building permit. And now let me flip it back over to our guide. So I'm going to just show you where we just recently revised our guide. It's the 2020 guide, but we've put in here that OSF will issue a building permit for plans reviewed for compliance with issues resolved from the plan review. And this is a point where we get a lot of incomplete plans that come in, and we're having to ensure that they meet the building code and safety requirements. So once the building permit is issued, you then have the opportunity to hire a general contractor of your choice through the bidding process. We are not involved in that bidding process. That happens after us. While the bidding is taking place, you would then choose whom your general contractor will be, as well as you have to also, this is the next step, you have to hire what's called a Chapter 1 inspector. And we have an approved list, I'll show you on our website, of the Chapter 1 inspectors that you can choose from because we approve them within our office. These particular Chapter 1 inspectors are also certified through the South Carolina Labor Licensing and Regulation Department as well. Chapter 1 represents Chapter 1 of the South Carolina Building Code. That's why they call them Chapter 1, in which they're looking at the building elements. And also a Chapter 17. We do not approve the Chapter 17, but that's also something that's needed for looking at your foundation and how you're building your building and making sure you're in compliant with Chapter 17. And so these particular inspectors are out there in the field, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, making sure that it's being built safe. And now let me go ahead and share with you that list so you make sure you get an approved Chapter 1 inspector. Okay, so going back to our department website, we have a block called South Carolina Inspectors Program. And the third bullet on the list is called South Carolina Approved Inspector Registry. So if you click on it, you will see there's 7 pages of certified Chapter 1 inspectors within the state of South Carolina, and you can then identify when their approval will expire. So we will also provide this to you as well. Okay. All right. So while your building is being built throughout that process, we as OSF, we come out and do what's called an above ceiling. Everything above the ceiling grid we look at for seismic support, making sure you have the proper grid system in place and it has all of the seismic requirements. For example, if there is an earthquake or a hurricane tornado coming through, you want to make sure that your ceiling is structurally sound so it doesn't fall on students, staff, or anyone else and cause major injuries or, unfortunate deaths. So it's very important that we come out and do that above ceiling inspection, as we call it. Once we do our above ceiling inspection, we then say you can go ahead and drop tile and cover the ceilings as well. The work continues on with the building, finishing it off, and then we come out and do what's called a final inspection. And during the final inspection, that's where we're testing the fire alarm system. We're checking for ADA requirements for the restrooms, making sure you have proper height for your fixtures, your toilets, your sinks. We're also testing the kitchen hood, if there's a kitchen hood involved or serving lunch within the kitchen area. And we're looking for also ADA compliance with the parking lot area as well, and it's especially fire department access. Okay, so once we finish our final inspection, we then issue what's called a certificate of occupancy, and it's like a birth certificate, as I call it, for the building itself, deeming it safe to occupy. And when it comes to the certificate, please hold on to that certificate because our department is not responsible for keeping up with the record part of the certificate. So it's very important that the district, keeps that particular certificate in a safe place, especially if administration is changing over as well. Okay. So the next I want to talk about is the timeline. Speaking of timeline, let me check my time here. Okay, getting close. So we're getting close on time for our part, so I'll just go through this. Wanted to have the opportunity, because I know this question comes up a lot, is what is the timeline? And I probably went against all rules when it comes to a bunch of information on one slide, but this is a big picture. So for the Office of School Facilities, from January to December, we have what's called spikes throughout the year where we're really, really busy in certain areas and when we're not. And so obviously in the summertime through June through August, that's our busiest time because for inspections, the inspections go up. Plan reviews go down because we are out in the field. Doesn't mean that plan reviews stop coming in the office, but our inspection piece go up because we do inspections. So that's why you see that red dot there. After the summer, inspections go down, but the plan reviews go up because now we have the opportunity to focus a lot more on the plan review piece. And then from January to May is gearing up for the summer. One of which we talked about was property acquisitions. And for us, it's about plus or minus about 3 months for that process. As you can tell, you got to find your property, if it's available, if you like the property, if your board approves of the property, and you got to get your phase 1 environmental report. Of course, our evaluation, SCDOT evaluation. So that process can definitely take some time. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm incorrect in this, the newly approved charter schools get approval around the April, May timeframe. And so if you can imagine starting at that window, April, May, and adding your months on from here. So you have your property acquisition, and then you have the OSF plan review. So once we get a plan review within our office, it can take anywhere from 30 plus or minus to 45 days or more, depending on what the scope of work is. The lot of issues that we run into is having a complete set from the design professional in order to review the plans themselves. It depends also on the size of the building. Larger buildings are trending more now than smaller. Scope of work, whether or not you're renovating a building that may be an older building and you're trying to bring it up to code, or if you're just building a brand new building. It also depends on our staff availability, like I mentioned, for inspections and plan reviews, the time of year, and also experience. And so we do have a fewer newer staff members that have joined our office, and so they're also coming up to speed as to what we do and what we look for. One of the bigger components is site construction. That can take 9 to 12 months, maybe even more if you're building a new building. And so from weather to whether or not you can pour your concrete to whether or not shipping and delivery will be on time, especially now with the COVID-19 going on. A lot of districts and charter schools are experiencing shipping delays, and whether or not rework is done, if they're doing it incorrectly, they'll have to do it all over again. Availability is also, and experience is also, can be challenging as well. And then the last part would be like I mentioned before, we do the overhead inspection and the final inspection. So this PowerPoint will be provided to you so you can see some of those things. I've mentioned some of the challenges already. Not having a design professional. The projects are being submitted too close to the projected school opening. And sometimes there's a turnover of staff that takes place, or and this is really not even just applicable to charter schools, this is just the audience today, but you may have one particular district wanting to move from one location to another location within a short period of time. And so the same evaluations still have to take place to ensure that the building is safe in which you're going to. One of which, as I mentioned, picking older buildings, it takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and even code research to look at that building and bring it up to current codes today. So one of the things that we focus a lot on, especially when I took office, is just having an open communication with Office of School Facilities. We certainly don't mind helping you through the process, letting you know what we do have, what we don't have, what we need for our review, and just keeping that line open for communication. We're certainly not here to give anyone a hard time. we're open and we're transparent as to what we're doing. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know or ask questions for Jack. He's our charter school lead. Let's see here. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have Ashley with the Department of Transportation.
All right. Thank you, Jasmine.
Welcome.
Well, Jasmine and Jack have provided a lot of good information to you so far. I believe I introduced myself earlier. I'm Ashley Johnson, oversee traffic operations group at DOT. Part of that includes our school operations group. Within that, I have two employees, Mark Falk and David Meekins, that cover the state. And like Jasmine and Jack said, that's a lot to cover with only two employees. So I believe both of them are on the call with us today. So if once I'm done with my presentation, if they have anything to add that I may have left out or misspoke about, then they are welcome to chime in as well. And I'm sure a lot of you have already worked with Mark and David. I see some of the names on the meeting here, and I know they've already worked with a lot of you guys. For any of those that may not know Mark or David, or not familiar with the process, we do have a map of the state that shows the areas that they cover. It's not really split along a straight line. It's a little mixed up. That map is available on the OSF website. I believe they have a link to it. I apologize for not being as proficient with these online meetings. I had the information available, but I'm not really sure how to show it on this meeting. So perhaps Jasmine can show you once I'm done, maybe show where it's located on their website. And if not, one of us can get that information to you. DOT's role in the school site review process, Jasmine and Jack have given you some information. From a DOT standpoint, what we're really focused on is the safe and efficient operation of our roads and the safety of the traveling public. So when it comes to schools, the school sites have to be able to accommodate the school traffic. They have to minimize the any issues, safety issues, any cars stacking out on the roads. Those type issues really have to be addressed. And schools, we get questions all the time of why do schools have to do this, and they don't have money to do this, and those type questions. Unfortunately, okay, I see Jasmine has the map up on the screen there, and we can provide this to you as well. As you see, Mark, we always say Mark covers the upstate and David covers the lower state, but as you can see from the map, it's a little mixed in there. So, and Mark and David's contact information our phone numbers are on that map. So thank you, Jasmine, for doing that. But as I was saying, our priority is traffic on our roads, making sure the school site can accommodate traffic, which involves having the appropriate amount of stacking, loops, whatnot. We do have some guidance that details some of these requirements. We have what we call an ARMS manual. It's our Access and Roadside Management Standards Manual, which can be found on DOT's website. And that's also, I believe, available, link to that. It's also available on OSF's website. Chapter 4 of that, and that guide really covers anything from driveways, driveway spacing, encroachment permits, really anything that impacts our roads. Chapter 4 of that guide covers the school requirements from an access standpoint. So that would be a good guide for you to possibly take a look at. Let's see. As Jasmine and Jack have already stated, with the site review process, Mark or David, depending on where the school site will be, they go out, participate in the school site. They look at things such as have the space or frontage to accommodate all of the or the required driveways. Some cases it's only a single driveway. Some cases it's more. Generally, in your typical public school, we have multiple driveways. You know, you have a bus access for bus loop, and car riders are generally separated. Faculty's in there somewhere, visitors. So we look at the access. We look at the size of the site as far as the ability to accommodate traffic to stack. You know, if you have a small enrollment and it's only car riders, then, you know, you'll have to plan for that. Some charter schools we've seen do use buses. So you really have to have a separate loop or a separate drop-off point for the buses to separate from the car riders. That has to be taken into consideration when you're planning or looking at your site. That requires more space. I believe that's come up in several cases. So just be aware that, you know, if you plan on having buses, then, you know, that's going to have to be accommodated on the site, and usually requires a larger site. I believe, as Jack said earlier, you know, with limited staff that we have, we really can't go out and look at every single site that may be proposed. I know a lot of the charter schools have, you know, sent David and Mark, you know, some multiple locations, and they're happy to provide feedback. Like Jack said, you know, we can do a cursory review, maybe on Google or something, to kind of pick out what any issues may be, or if it looks like a good site, you know, we can kind of narrow it down and then go out and do an official field review, site review, just because we don't have time to go around the state looking at every, you know, site that you may be interested in. Let's see, what else? Another issue that may come up when you're looking at a site, or you may decide on a site, is a traffic impact study may be required, which does cost more money. So, you know, we've had questions about why impact studies are required. It really depends on the location, if you're in an urban area versus a rural area, or really just depends on what the surrounding characteristics are, the volume of traffic you're going to have, the enrollment. You know, if you're going to have 1,000 student school, then it's very likely you're going to have to provide an impact study. And what the impact study provides, it usually evaluates access at the schools as well as surrounding intersections, or, you know, the general area that will be impacted by all this traffic. It'll determine, you know, whether or not, you know, we need, or it'll provide us a tool to evaluate whether or not turn lanes would be needed, you know, improvements to traffic signals, new traffic signals, you know, anything like that that may be required to mitigate traffic. So don't be surprised if, you know, during our initial review, if you know, you find out that the traffic impact study will be required. And we coordinate with our district traffic engineering offices around the state, and oftentimes we'll leave it kind of to their judgment as to whether or not an impact study would be needed. Some districts require it pretty much on everything, some don't. So just be aware of that. And if you want more information on that, Chapter 6 of our ARMS manual covers traffic impact studies, provides a little guidance on, when they may be required versus when they may not be, and what's involved or what's required within the study. So that's something that you need to be aware of and may come up. And I know a lot of you have already had to do those. Let's see, once the school site's approved through OSF, and our guys have, provided their site report to OSF and the site's approved. As Jasmine says, you have to need to have a design professional on board. And really, we've had some cases where you need to have the design professional on board even during the site review process. We've had some instances where, a design professional can come up with a conceptual site layout to show that the traffic can be accommodated, or, the loops will fit, the accesses will fit. So that's always, the earlier you get someone on board, the better. But once the site's been approved and you have design to draw up your plans, like Jasmine's already covered, those will need to be sent to OSF DOT for review. And once DOT is satisfied, like I said, we coordinate with our district traffic offices around the state so that they're try to head off any issues that they may have, coordinate, kind of work out any issues. Once we get to a point of approving plans from our standpoint, we'll issue a concurrence letter, which in many cases you'll have to then go to our encroachment permit process. If you're having new driveways, even updating old driveways, anything like that, you're gonna have to go through the encroachment permit process if it's on a state road. So we'll kind of work with our encroachment permit guys, usually at the district level, to make sure all that any issues with the encroachment permit are worked out. So then once you get your encroachment permit for your driveways or whatnot, you can go on to your construction phase. Our DOT's review process also includes not only new sites, but any renovations to existing schools, additions, expansion, any traffic changes. So, you may think, hey, we're going to add a couple portables, we're going to increase our enrollment. We don't have to do anything, but if it's sent to OSF for their review, it really comes to DOT as well. You may think that's unnecessary, but it's needed from our end, and lots of times, it may not be much to it. Say, well, yeah, that's fine. They're not increasing enrollment. They're not changing any traffic patterns. So, it's good, but we'll issue, our concurrence letter from our office saying, we're good with everything. So really any kind of improvements, anything that changes enrollment, traffic patterns, footprint of the site, if you're some things like, improving your roof or, internal security updates or anything like that, OSF will usually check with us on that. And, a lot of time we don't have to review that type of stuff. Let's see. I will say the charter schools have really been a little different than, our general dealing with public schools and public school districts. Oftentimes the charter schools, we understand that charter schools, they're starting off, they don't have a lot of money. They're oftentimes looking for temporary sites, which we'll work with you on. Some sites will work, some won't. Oftentimes, a school may want to go in a shopping center or some little site that was previously, something else. And oftentimes, though, we can get those to work from a traffic standpoint. Sometimes we can't. So we've had situations where The charter schools have started off in a temporary site, for a couple of years, and then they want to move to a permanent site. We've had situations where they want to start off on a site, say with only a small enrollment, and then grow their enrollment over a few years, and have basically a phased approach to expanding their school, adding on construction, adding on athletic facilities. So anytime that occurs, DOT should be involved with that process with OSF. We're willing to work with charter schools. We know they're a little different animal than just your standard public schools. So Mark and David have been doing this for a while. They're good to work with, and if you have questions, really just direct them to Mark and David, and they'll be glad to help you. I believe that's about all I have. Like I said, we have some guidance in our ARMS manual. Those links are available on OSF's website, or if you go to DOT's website, they're on there as well. And basically, if you have any questions, I recommend that you contact Mark or David. And if you're not sure which area they cover or which area your school's in, they'll get you to the right guy if it's not them. So, all right, I believe Jasmine's pulling up the link there, or the web page there that has all our links, which takes you to the DOT website, which has some various manuals. You'll see there the Access and Roadside Management Standards is the manual that covers your school access and impact studies and that type of stuff. So that's the link. I guess that's all I have. Mark or David, if y'all are on the line, and if you have anything you want to add in at the moment, feel free to. Or if you want to wait till the end when we have our question and answer session, that'd be fine as well. Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you, Ashley. So, we are approaching the top of the hour. We're just going to take a break, and we'll convene back at between 11 and 11:05. Okay. It is 11:05. We're just going to come back and reconvene. And yes, I will touch on a couple of questions that came through the chat on our Q&A session. So next up, we have Nathan Ellis with the State Fire Marshal's Office. Nathan?
Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this presentation and share a little bit with everybody about what we do at State Fire and how it relates to the school construction process, but also with what happens to your school after it's constructed and once you start occupying that building. So Jasmine and Jack and Ashley have all done a great job kind of setting the stage for my part of the presentation. They've been talking about all the things that happen to prepare you for construction and during construction when you're acquiring buildings and building buildings, getting the site plans approved and getting all the inspections performed. But once you, and State Fire has a role in some of those processes as well, and I'll touch on that. But once you occupy that building and start having school there, you fall under the jurisdiction of several other local authorities, as well as the State Fire Marshal's Office. So I wanted to kind of first, I haven't really introduced myself, but I'm Nathan Ellis. I'm the Assistant State Fire Marshal. I manage the programs at the State Fire Marshal's Office. Just a few minutes ago during the break, I left my contact information in the chat box over there. So you can cut and paste that or save that so that you can get in touch with us anytime. I also provided a link to our website. I'm going to try to share my screen. Jasmine, if this doesn't work, let me know.
Okay.
Can you guys see the State Fire website? Does that work?
Let's see.
You're still seeing me?
Let me. I do not see it, but can you see my screen?
Let me try one other thing here. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. We figured it out. Okay, so State Fire is known as in statute as the Division of Fire and Life Safety. We are a part of the Labor License and Regulation Department that Jasmine's already mentioned to you earlier today, that licenses all your contractors, architects, engineers, and that performs sprinkler plan reviews, and those actually take place under us. But Division of Fire and Life Safety is a mouthful, so we just go by State Fire. That's kind of what we call ourselves. There's three parts of State Fire. There's the Office of State Fire Marshal, which I'll talk a lot about today. That's the part that I manage. We have a State Fire Academy that trains 30,000 firefighters a year, come through our academy from all around the world. They don't just come from South Carolina, but literally from all around the world. And we have an emergency response division that is responsible for helicopter and swift water rescues, boat rescues, responding to hurricanes and tornadoes and large scale emergency responses around our state, large fires and things like that. We interact with the local fire service on a daily basis through our Fire Academy, emergency response, and through our programs at the Fire Marshal's Office. From this website, you can find a lot of helpful information. We've already talked about a little bit about our engineering plan reviews, the licensing, the plan review process that we do for fire sprinklers. So design professionals know, hopefully, to come to our website and find that. While we're here, I'll point out that so far in 2020, we've had 48 fire fatalities. 48 South Carolina citizens have died in fires. We usually average close to 100 every year, and here we are in the middle of the year, start of July, and we're at 48. So we're right on our average, and I'll mention that a little bit more in my presentation in a few minutes as well. I wanted to point out on our website, you can find our statutes and regulations if you follow this link, but you can also find policies And one of the policies that we're going to talk about today, you have to scroll down. Our list has kind of gotten inverted here. It's got the newer dates at the bottom, but 2019, we're going to talk about this model fire and life safety, or fire and safety policies for schools, school districts and charter schools. And you can find that document on our website. It'll open up as a PDF. It actually links back. You'll see in the address up here back to the Department of Education. If you go to Department of Education's website, right next to Superintendent Spearman, you'll find the same document, a link to the same document right here on their website as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit. I thought that would be a good introduction to who we are at State Fire, just to see that we do more than just inspect schools. When I talk to the pyrotechnic industry, they think all we do is inspect and regulate the pyrotechnic industry in South Carolina. When I deal with the LP gas industry, they think all we do is regulate LP gas. And when I talk to school districts and schools, a lot of times they think all we do is regulate schools, do fire inspections and code enforcement at schools in South Carolina. But we have a lot of other roles and a lot of other hats that we wear. But you can find a lot of information about State Fire and our different programs on our website. And I just wanted to share that with you as an introduction. So we'll go to my presentation now. Again, I wanted to go over the requirements of the 2018 Act 256. And Jasmine's already given you guys the background. The reason that we have fire codes in South Carolina and really across the country is largely because of an event that happened in South Carolina, the school fire, Cleveland school fire in Camden in 1923. Jasmine mentioned this to kick off our program today, and when I share this presentation with school district folks, I usually share this story as well. That was just one of a number of significant fires that happened in the early 1900s in schools. You can see that list there. There were a lot of major death tolls, large death tolls at school fires in the early 1900s. So there's obviously a need that we have fire codes in schools. But people think that schools today are a lot safer and they're built a lot better. The materials that we build our buildings out of are more resilient, stronger, and less combustible. We're not building wood frame schools like that 1923 school. But the difference, I would like to say that school fires are probably have the potential to be more deadly today than they did in 1923, and it's because of our contents. So let me show you. I'm going to fast forward through this, but I'm going to share a quick video. This is what's referenced on that slide. There's some science that's done by the Underwriters Laboratory. On our left is the old furniture. Now, this is furniture that you would have in your home, but on the left is the legacy furniture. This is our grandparents' furniture. On the right is our modern furniture in our homes today. The same principle applies in our schools. Think about what a school classroom was like in 1923, and think about what your classroom is like today. The materials, the contents, the amount of stuff that we have in every cabinet and every closet in our schools and in our homes is completely different than what it was in 1923. So our grandparents' furniture on the left, you can see a fire was started on both couches. On the left, you can see the fire burning. On the right, it might be hard to see on your screen, but there's starting to be some really dark smoke. We don't see dark smoke on the left. The contents on the left were made out of natural materials, cotton, straw, the wood. The furniture is made out of wood. Our contents on our rights are all made out of hydrocarbons, polyester, and styrofoam, foam-filled furniture. There's so much plastics in our rooms today. So this fire was ignited just a minute ago. Hopefully your smoke alarms are going off if this is in a house. If we're in a school and we're talking about school furniture and school contents, hopefully the fire alarm's going off because years ago, our grandparents, they had about 15 to 20 minutes to get out of their house when a fire happened. But today we have less than 3 minutes. As a matter of fact, if you stood up in this room on the right and breathed that black smoke that's filling up at the ceiling level there, you're probably going to die within 1 or 2 breaths of that black smoke. There's enough toxins in there that's going to kill you. Before long, this room's going to be so hot that you wouldn't be able to survive just because of the heat anyway. And that's going to happen in less than 3 minutes. One thing that's false about this illustration is that this black smoke is escaping to the atmosphere. This room only has 3 walls. It's missing this 4th wall. All the black smoke you see escaping into the atmosphere here is really spreading through the rest of your house. So that fire in that living room is putting this same amount of black smoke in every room. If the doors are open and it's able to spread through your house, every room of your house is going to have that same black smoke. It's not just escaping to the atmosphere. By this point, you can see fire burning under the couch. Really, that's not fire burning. That's the couch turning into a liquid. It's turning into gasoline. The couch is made out of the same hydrocarbon that you put that is gasoline that you put in your car. It's turning into a liquid, and it's actually dripping down and puddling up on the floor and burning underneath that couch. You'll never see that happen in the fire on the left because these were natural materials. They were not hydrocarbons. They were not made out of chemical compounds. So our fires today are much more deadly. The smoke is much more deadly. The time that you have to react to a fire is very different today than it would have been in 1923, even in 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. I'm going to speed our video up a little bit. 3 minutes and 40 seconds is when that room went to flashover. Flashover is considered the whole room. All of its contents are completely on fire. There's absolutely nothing. Even a firefighter in all of his gear cannot survive that kind of a fire. But you can see 15 minutes later, I'll speed it up. It takes about 25 minutes before the legacy furniture actually goes to full room involvement. And even then, the fire doesn't look as violent as the fire on the right. So our contents are completely different today. Things have definitely changed, and the school environment is no different. So while I'm talking about school fire safety, I can also apply this to your home. There's some other things we apply to homes, and I want everybody to take this away. I talked about how fast the smoke spreads through your house. The closing of a bedroom door, we have a saying that we promote now. It's called close before you doze. Before you go to bed at night, close your bedroom door. If there's a fire in your house and you cannot get out, you're awake but you can't make it out of your house, close a door. Stop the spread of the smoke. This is an actual fire in Oconee County. When the firefighters went in, this is the condition of the hallway. You can see the sooting all over the walls, the blistering of the paint, and the sheetrock on the walls. This was very high temperature. This fire looked like the fire in the video we just showed you. But right here where my cursor is, my little hand there's a bedroom door. This is the other side of that door. The firefighters put the fire out, opened that door, and they found an elderly man laying in the bed in this room. The only reason he survived that fire, they took him out a window. The only reason he survived the fire is because the doors closed. So we know that compartmentalization, closing a door, compartmentalizing the fire, that stops the spread of fire and saves lives. Close before you doze is just one part of the message. If you don't have early notification, or if your only smoke alarm is in the hallway, way down the hall or across the house, you don't have smoke alarms in every bedroom, then closing your door may not do you any good because you're not going to hear the smoke alarm sound. Smoke alarms are required in homes in every single sleeping room and the area outside the sleeping room. That's to give you the best chance to be notified early enough in the fire to be able to get out. There's still another element, and it's practicing escape drills. We don't think about doing fire drills in our homes, but a large number of the fatal fires that we have in South Carolina, State Fire goes to every single one of them, and we do a research project and an investigation on every fatal fire. And we find that about 80% of the time, the victims went past plenty, numerous sometimes escape opportunities trying to go to the front door or trying to go back to the kitchen door. They actually took themselves towards the fire when they could have went out a window. Nobody thinks to go out the windows because they don't practice and they don't plan escape drills. And when the event happens and your body is filled with adrenaline, your mind is reacting to the fire, you don't think to make choices. You do what you come and go the way that you come and go every single day, which is back to your front door or back to your kitchen door. And that sometimes takes you back toward the fire. So we know that Closing your door is going to save your life when you have working smoke alarms for early notification, and when you make escape plans, when you have plans and you think about it and you practice it in your home. All of that makes for a fire safe home, and it also makes for a fire safe school. Your schools are going to be built with compartmentalization that are going to slow and sometimes stop the spread of the smoke and the fire. There's going to be not just smoke alarms or fire alarms. There's going to be sometimes fire protection systems like sprinkler systems in your schools. All of our modern schools typically are large enough to require sprinkler systems now. And then fire drills are going to be important in the schools. So we know all these things are important. They're important in our homes, and they're just as important in our schools. I told you we have well, I don't think I told you this yet. So we have about an average of 84 school fires a year. A couple of years ago, that average was more closer to 100. I used to tell people there's 100 school fires a year, and they never believe that. You don't hear about them a lot of times because they're small events, because we have suppression systems, we have compartmentalization. I'll show you a picture of that in a few minutes, or an illustration of it. This picture here on that screen is actually a school fire in South Carolina, and that's a janitor's closet. Think about all the things you have in a janitor's closet. There's a lot of paper products, there's a lot of plastic products. There's rolling trash cans, janitor's carts. In this particular janitor's closet, there was a floor buffer. This door is actually a fire-rated door, but it was being held open by a wooden chock. If it had been closed, the fire in this school would have probably cost them a few $1,000s, maybe $10,000 or $20,000, $30,000 at most, to repair the fire that happened in this one room. School might have been closed for one day, but I doubt it even had to have closed school. This fire happened on a Sunday night before a Monday school day. But instead, that door was left open, and the entire school was coated with black soot. The fire was contained to that one room, but just because the door was left open, this school was closed for months, and the cost was in the millions of dollars. All the floors, all the ceilings, everything had to be replaced or refurbished. Schools was disrupted at 3 other schools. This was a middle school, if I remember correctly, and they had to find 3 other schools in that district to send those 3 grade levels to that could accommodate those students. So those other schools were disrupted for months. I guarantee you it impacted test scores for these students who were displaced, not only at this school, but those other schools, because they had to change classrooms. They had to have larger class sizes and everything else to accommodate these kids. Families were inconvenienced. You used to drop your kids off at one school, brother and sister. Now you got to drop them off at 2 different schools. It changed the whole traffic pattern for that community when this one school closed. It changed bus routes. A lot of significant changes that could have been saved, a lot of money spent that could have been saved if a door had just been closed. Same kind of fire happened at Carolina High School in Greenville County. 700 people in the building at the time of the fire. But there was a fire alarm that went off, and everybody practiced, or they executed the fire drill like they're supposed to. A single sprinkler head. Sprinklers are important. It can put the fire out. This fire, by the way, is the same thing that causes the majority of fires in your schools are intentional acts. Some student does it. It's not an accident. It's an intentional act. I said majority. I shouldn't have said that. It's about a quarter of the fires, but that is way higher than the normal instance of intentional set fires in most buildings. Normally, it's about 3 to 5% of our fires are intentionally set. Most of them are accidents. But when you look at schools, it's a quarter of the fires are intentionally set. So this fire was intentionally set in a bathroom. Someone set the toilet paper holder on fire. Maybe they didn't want to take a test. Maybe they wanted to have a fire drill. They wanted to get out of class for a few minutes. I don't know. But they didn't intend to burn the school down, but they set a fire. Nobody got hurt. There was no building damage. There was no missed school time. Probably 10 minutes after the fire started, they were back in class. They could put everybody back inside. No tax dollars, and the last one down there, it never made the news. Most of your school fires are contained to the object of origin. They are very small, but as the example in the previous slides, when you have one that actually does spread beyond the object of origin, and we start consuming other materials, it can be very costly to your schools. So because of these things, Act 256 requires this. It required, because this is in the past now, the state fire marshal and Department of Education to create some model school safety guidelines during this last school year. And we were able to do that. That guidance document that's on the 2 websites that I shared with you a few minutes ago is very lengthy. It has a lot of great detail in it. It goes into all the detail that you need to know about those requirements. It requires school districts and charter schools to adopt policies by the beginning of this school year. However, we realized we did not know COVID was going to happen, and school was going to be completely different. We go back, we don't even know what school is going to look like. So while we cannot change the law internally between us and Department of Education, we can't change the law. Legislators enacted that. They would have to change the law. We understand that school districts are not focused on adopting this policy. We plan to spend this next school year continuing to educate school districts about the law so that you can be prepared next year to implement the policies and the programs that are outlined in this law. But I'll briefly run through it with you because I don't have a lot of time. It requires school districts to partner with your local fire departments. So your local fire departments have code enforcement authority. If they have local ordinances that allow them to write tickets and issue penalties, they can do that to your school. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want them to have to do that, but they can enforce the code locally through local ordinances. And if that includes monetary fines and court dates or whatnot, and that goes to the principal or the superintendent or whoever that goes to, that's handled on a local level. That's not something I can control. I just need to tell you that they have code enforcement authority in your local schools. Schools are not immune to local jurisdiction, so they have authority there. So earlier when Jack and Jasmine were talking about in the process, the design professional reaching out to the local fire departments, while the local fire departments don't have a obligation to be involved or a statutory requirement to be involved in the permitting and construction of your school, they're going to be involved as soon as that school is occupied because it's their jurisdiction to do so. We want you to build a partnership with the local fire district, and that even starts during construction or before construction for new schools. And then that fire district is going to perform fire inspections at some frequency. And you should know, is that annually? Is it every 2 years? Is it every 3 years? Do they come twice a year? How often are they going to do some fire inspections? But ultimately, what we told the legislators when they were making this law is if
Hey, Nathan, your audio broke out. We can no longer hear you.
Can you hear me now, Jasmine?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Let me try to hop back to that. I know that I do not have much longer. You guys are not seeing the presentation right now. Let me see. Share. Okay, can you see the presentation and hear me?
I can hear you, but not see the presentation.
Your presentation. That's okay. I know I'm running out of time anyway. I will make this thing resolve fast. There in Act 256 requires the school districts to partner with the local fire district. It requires you to identify the frequency of their inspections. There's going to be a reporting system at Department of Education for you to upload this information. It's part of your annual school reports that you have to do anyway, safe schools and some of those kind of things. Another aspect of the Act 256 requires school districts to do monthly self-assessments because we realize that schools are not safe based on the frequency of the fire marshal doing a fire inspection, but what happens when the fire marshal is not there. how is the school maintaining itself? Is it aware of what it needs to do to have a safe environment? So we want you to have a safe environment. We want you to take some ownership in that. So the monthly self-assessment will look at things like your sprinkler system, your fire alarm, your commercial kitchen hood suppression systems, making sure that all of those things are operating like they're supposed to be. And we're going to look at your fire rated doors and assemblies. We want you to look at those things, making sure that there are no wooden chocks holding open a fire rated door that's going to end up costing your school millions of dollars when that fire rated door could have saved you those millions of dollars when a fire happens. That's going to give you time to escape that fire from that building too. Remember how fast our fire spreads, our smoke spreads through the building. So fire rated assemblies are a key component to school construction, and you've got to maintain them. You got to make sure the doors are closing and latching and that they're not being chocked open. So that's a part of the monthly self-assessment. Things like emergency lights, exit signs, fire extinguishers, making sure that they're all present and working. We have a section in there about classroom considerations, the amount of artwork and teaching materials, the curtains, the furnishings that you put in classrooms, all of that matters. We want school districts and teachers all the way down to the classroom level to understand what should and shouldn't take place in their classroom. The fire marshal doing an annual inspection doesn't accomplish that, but having the schools involved in monthly self-assessments, which become a part of their daily routine, that's how we accomplish that. There's some things in our guidance document and monthly self-assessment about how we use extension cords, making sure we use them correctly. We talk about classroom doors and barricade devices. That's a whole nother conversation that we can have another time. If you're interested in doing that, please reach out to me if you want to know about barricade devices for intruders and that kind of thing. We talk about the hallway, maintaining our egress paths clear, making sure our exit doors are all accessible and openable. So all that's part of the Act 256 and the monthly self-assessments that schools have to do. Again, we're going to take the next school year just to continue to educate schools. We don't expect you to implement it just yet. Even though the law said to implement it this school year, we realize there's a lot of other things going on. The last thing 256 requires is that you do at least 2 fire drills, 2 active shooter drills, and 2 severe weather drills per year. I wanted to point out that the law requires at least 2 fire drills and 2 of those other drills, but our South Carolina Fire Code and regulations require a monthly drill. And so we like to educate you that monthly drills are important, and that is what's required in regulation. That accomplishes what the law says of at least 2. 2 is not the maximum, 2 is the minimum, and monthly is what the regulation requires. Fire drills are extremely important. We've recently, I'll be sharing something with Jasmine that we can share with school districts about how to do fire drills in a post-COVID world, where you can still do social distancing during fire drills. We'll share that with you soon. The last thing I'll leave you with is just that during construction, OSF will reach out to our office, obviously for the sprinkler plan review that Jasmine mentioned earlier. That's conducted at the State Fire Marshal's office as a part of LLR. So if you ever experience a problem or a delay in getting your sprinkler plans approved and you want to find out what's going on with that, then you can reach out to me, because I'm the person that would be able to get you an answer there. So feel free to contact me about sprinkler plans. But we also do site plans for fire department access, and we also assist with the final inspections, the testing of the sprinkler systems and the fire alarms with OSF. So we're there at their request. We do those site plans at their request, just to verify fire code compliance, and sometimes to bridge a gap between the local fire department and OSF. So we realize that 80% of our state is served by volunteer fire departments, and while they do a great job with fire suppression, they don't always have the expertise and the time to focus on fire code compliance. So even when your school starts doing monthly self-assessments, and I've asked you to build partnerships with your local fire department, sometimes those partnerships for code enforcement, the partnerships for construction inspections and plan review, they're just not going to be there. So we will fill the gap. Part of the reason you're going to report your local fire marshal and the frequency of inspection to Department of Education is so that we can see where the gaps are. And if you don't have a local fire marshal, you might have a local fire department who serves you, but you don't have a fire marshal who's doing code enforcement. State Fire will be there to fill in those gaps, and we'll do some routine inspections. We'll help you implement your monthly self-assessments and help you understand what you need to do to comply. So always reach out to us. I shared my contact information earlier in the chat box, and Jasmine can share it with you at a later time as well. But feel free to reach out to us anytime. We can help you answer questions about any of the fire safety aspects of your school. I will say that I have numerous presentations available for administrators, for classroom teachers, for facility managers. I have done specific presentations based on Act 256 for each of those audience groups. If you have an association that meets, you're looking for presenters, I can go into much more detail than I was able to share here, specific to the audience, if I have that opportunity. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Nathan, for that great presentation. Ashley and Jack, greatly appreciate it. So as you can tell, I'm gonna go back to that slide. I know we're in our QA session. It's so important. All of the items that was mentioned, that Nathan mentioned during his presentation, that's what we as OSF are doing at that final inspection. We're making sure the doors close properly, that the smoke detectors are working, sprinkler system is active, and fire alarm system is working to help protect the school in that manner. Without further ado, we will move on now to our Q&A session. So the first, I saw a question in the chat from Hunter regarding clarification on the different timelines, lease, renovate buildings from the ground up. Okay. So I get this question a lot as who is a building official? If I'm building a school versus if I'm leasing a building that's already located in a particular area. So let me share my, when it comes to the South Carolina Building Code, you'll see it mentioned multiple times throughout the whole building code itself. It's always in reference to the owner. Any and everything, the owner is getting the permit, the owner is needing the inspection, everything is related to the owner. And so when it comes to building officials, it depends on who is the owner of the building. And so from a school district standpoint, whether if it's a charter school or a public school, that's how we define the owner of the building. So if you are owning that building, if you are purchasing that building, your building official is school facilities. And let me go over to our guide. And so, like I said earlier in my presentation, being the building official, that means we have the authority to review the plans, issue the permit, do our inspections, and give you a certificate of occupancy that you'll have for your building. When it comes to a lease building, I don't know if I could zoom in. You're leasing the building, you're not the owner of the building. The building could be owned by someone else in that area. That building is owned by the local jurisdiction in that community. They have a say-so as to whether or not that building is going to be safe to occupy or not. They will be the ones responsible for doing the review, the inspections, and issuing the certificate of occupancy. But it's not that black and white. And I think that this is where the confusion comes in. We have a state statute, and it's here 5923-210, that South Carolina, our department, are required all construction, improvement, and renovation projects for public school buildings. Requires plan review and specification receive approval before bidding. This is how our office still stays involved because you are a school. So even though our office is not giving you a building permit, issuing you a certificate of occupancy, we still have a guide, this is the guide that I'm actually referring to, our South Carolina School Facilities Guide. We still have the responsibility to ensure that our guide is being enforced because it is a public school in order to meet our end of our state statute requirements. So that's how our office is still involved, even if you're leasing the building from that local jurisdiction. Now, in some cases, the local jurisdiction, they will decide on their own, and we'll ask them, do you want to keep your authority with reviewing plans and issuing your building permit, or do you want to turn it over to the Office of School Facilities? If they choose to turn it over, they would have to provide us that information in writing, and then we would do the same thing we do with any other school and the same thing we do with any other project, follow our process when it comes to issuing the building permit and doing all of the subsequent inspections that follow. Okay. In the case where the local jurisdiction wants to keep their authority and they do not want to turn it over to the Office of School Facilities, legally, we cannot just barge into that area. We have developed a working relationships with the local, and like Nathan just said, he helps us establish those relationships to come in and to still be able to look at that building and give our input as it relates to our guide within itself. Keeping in mind, whoever your South Carolina design professional, they are still held responsible for ensuring that those plans that they're developing for you and your building still meets our guideline as well, even if we're not the local AHJ for that particular school or building. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and anyone have questions in regards to that, and I can continue to give examples until it's at least clear as mud.
Jasmine, this is Adam. I have a question, different question.
Okay.
Adam from Green Charter School. So as you know, we have opened a couple schools. Our main challenge is you guys mentioned the timeline, purchasing the property, getting the OSF approval, design approval. The problem is, the challenge is, the new charter schools approval is happening, as you stated, in April or May. So no landlord or seller is willing to get into an agreement before they see the charter school approval. Or you cannot sign an agreement or LOI or a contract before the approval of the charter school. That puts us in a very short timeline to get the building secured and purchased during the summertime, and especially if it is a new construction, there is very short time, very limited time to get everything done. So I know it's not you, I know it's not either charter school, but timeline, either we have to speed up something, getting extra people to take care of charter schools, or the school approval process should be pushed a little bit earlier, like instead of April, May, it should be January, February, so we will have enough time to look for the building. That's the main challenge, and every single year we face the same problem.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And just a caveat off of what you're saying, even with our department, is if we don't know if a charter school is going to get approval, we cannot expend that much resource and not even knowing if a charter school is going to get approved. So that is I think everybody's in that boat when it comes to whether or not, you're going to get approval, and then however long it takes to actually look at the land, purchase the land, and get all the required documents in place. And if you can imagine, say if everything went perfect in a perfect setting after the approval process, the plans are going to come to our office right in the middle of the season where we're mostly in the field doing inspections. So I think there is some opportunities to look at that.
Yeah, because in your timeline, it says start January, finish the building by May. It doesn't start in January. Technically, it starts in April or May, whenever the approval is happening. So that timeline technically is not practical.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that it takes about 3 months or so to acquire a piece of property? Is that about what people are experiencing?
at least 3 months. If the bond is involved, it's going to take more. But I was trying to point out that we cannot start negotiating or contracting with sellers in January because there is no charter in front of us. There is no charter to prove that, hey, we are an approved charter. We are interested in your property. What we can say in January, hey, we applied. We don't know yet if our charter is going to be approved, but we are interested in your property. There is no concrete baseline to start with negotiation. Nobody will take that promise and the verbal and lip service. Hey, okay, I'm willing to sell my property to you, even though charter is not approved. It's not going to happen.
Mhm. I understand. I understand. And like I said, I think that this is truly an opportunity to look at it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to put you on the spotlight. It's something that we have to work together with.
Yes.
The authorizer timeline is not working good for us. I mean, I have experienced that every single year. As you know, we opened 3 different schools. Every year it was the same problem.
Mhm. Mhm. I do know for our office, when September comes, it really becomes, because I've implemented a schedule where in my office we have each person in the office 4 days a week doing the review. And then if you have to be on an inspection, it would be 1 day a week. And so that has helped out our schedule to increase the number of plans we can get to in issuing building permits. And so that has been very beneficial. That's why that September, December timeline is green for us. We're just going through plan reviews left and right. And also we've hired contractors to help us part-time for some of the plans that come in with those particular plan reviews as well. So I think with a mixture of that and what you're saying about looking at this schedule and seeing what's the best time, maybe to move a few things around, some deadlines or points for the school to be open, that this could be a smoother process as a whole.
Yeah, I think so. That it is very tight. That timeline. I mean, it's maybe the districts should move their approval process a little bit earlier toward January, February. So that will give us everybody 18 months instead of just 12 months. 12 months is not enough to find a property, get in touch with your DOT. I mean, we've been trying to schedule DOT for months to come up Greenville to look at for a couple properties. I know COVID-19 messed up everything, but it is not an easy task.
No, it has its challenges. I will say that, especially with COVID-19 being in the mix of it now. Yeah, a lot of people are, working in smaller groups and social distancing and at least trying to make themselves as available as much as possible. So any suggestions you have is certainly greatly appreciated. You say you with
Hey,
Erskine,
Jasmine.
correct?
Hey, Jasmine, this is Donna.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, we can sit down and work with your office and let's look at the charter application approval timeline again and just align everything back up just to see where we have flexibility and can adjust. And maybe since Jack is exclusively for charters, then maybe that will allow some flexibility. I know you guys are swamped with all schools in the state, but if he's just working with charters, maybe that'll be the place where we can have some flexibility with either truncating the timeline or just shifting some things. But let's sit down and we can kind of crosswalk the 2 timelines and see where we can make adjustments that make sense for everybody.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I think there's some coming through the chat. Yes, we will send the presenters email information through the presentation. Yes, it's because of, so this is Hunter's question. If Charleston is the local jurisdiction for a lease, because we do not own the building, they would be the local permitting and zoning authority with OSF as a co-pilot. That's correct. That's correct. If they want to give it over back or give it to us, they can, and they can put that in writing, but you're absolutely correct in that, Hunter. Yes.
Jasmine,
Yes.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks. So the other question I had, which also I think impacts timeline, is this question of OSF as the permitting authority, I guess, as the primary versus the local jurisdiction. I mean, charters are their separate legal entities, and so I like a small business that in a city that would own a building, and so I'm still a little confused relative to when we must go to OSF, because the state charter district or Erskine's not owning the building itself per se. The charter board is as a separate legal entity, which all of that would impact timelines. And so I just asked that, trying to get a clear understanding of, because I think to Adim's point, timeline is challenging, but also the capital to most startup charter schools can't really afford a 2-year construction window. School districts operate differently when they build buildings, but financing charter schools, it's very difficult for a startup charter school to finance a 2-year construction window and then open, on time and successfully. And so I think this question about local jurisdiction, OSF as the primary versus co-pilot, and how that factors and relates to timeline is a pretty important one. So we just appreciate, and it probably won't be on this call, but any follow-up clarity on that would be appreciated, just relative to our situation.
Absolutely. And just as you described how you have, I call it, different financial backing sources to fund that particular school, the school itself, of course, still is under the umbrella of the Erskine, though I understand that the money is coming maybe from a different source, not directly from Erskine themselves. And if you can look at it, the same thing for school districts. The school districts are using a funding source such as taxpayers' dollars through bond referendums, and well, there's no state funds, but they're using still other sources. But the way that we identify it is if that district is buying and being the owner of the property, then school facilities would be the authority having jurisdiction. And so the same thing in the case with the charter school. If the charter school, I say, is owning the building in quotations through whichever financial sources that is actually providing the money, then that particular charter school owns that building. But if, say, someone other different owner that owned a plaza that included a Food Lion that had nothing to do with the charter schools, that building is under the local jurisdiction of the building official in that area, because they're completely separate from the charter school in itself.
Sure. And to put financing sources aside for a second, the charter school as a legal entity is separate and distinct from Erskine or from the state charter district. And so in my mind, they're much closer to a local business owning the plaza because of the way the legal structure for charter schools is. And so that's why I understand it's a school, but because a charter school legal entity is the building is not owned by the state charter district. In the case of traditional schools, that building is owned by the local district, but with charters, it is different. It's a charter is a small business, basically, like a local commercial realtor would own, or a real estate group would own a plaza. And so I'm just raising this for, again, trying to get clarity on what the expectation is in terms of the interpretation, because it definitely impacts timeline. It definitely impacts, you know, a number of things for opening. And so, and Don, I don't know if this is a related question that you all would weigh in on, but clarity on this point, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Hunter, I've suggested that, you know, let our two offices get together and make some connections here. And then I've also suggested possibly that we reach out and get maybe a stakeholder group together with schools and sponsors, just to make sure all of the timelines and everything are aligning and make sense before we move forward with anything official or make any changes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I see the hand raise feature. I haven't used that feature before. Okay, Hunter, do you have another question?
No, sorry, that was my question. I just couldn't get audio to work.
Okay. All right, do we have any other hand raising questions coming through the chat? Yeah, I thought this part we're going to just get so many questions and we're going to be here till 1. But we're more than glad to answer any questions that you do have. If you think of any, let us know. We'll provide all the contact information. And what I'll do, I'll get maybe Nathan's presentation and send it over as a whole with all the information in one place. Yeah, that works great. All right. So Jack or Ashley or Nathan, do y'all have any final comments?
I don't. I'm just available. Like I said, I put my contact information in the chat box. So if anyone needs to reach me, you can find my contact info there.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to helping anybody any way we can. Thanks.
All right. Thank y'all so much again, and have a good rest of the day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.